Is the Roloff family legacy a sprawling farm built over decades of hard work and televised struggles, nothing more than a financial house of cards? Tonight, we pull back the curtain on a story you won't see on TLC, a dark narrative of phantom debt, secret loans, and a calculated deception that has allegedly pushed Roloff Farms to the very brink of bankruptcy. Our exclusive investigation, pieced together from insider reports and financial theories, points to a shocking conclusion. Caryn Chandler, the woman Matt Roloff trusts implicitly, may have secretly mortgaged the farm's future to fund a lifestyle of unimaginable luxury. We're talking about millions of dollars in hidden debt, a scheme so sophisticated it went unnoticed for years, and a ticking time bomb that threatens to destroy everything Matt has built, including his final buyout payment to Amy and any hope of an inheritance for his children. This isn't just farm drama, it's a potential financial catastrophe. Before we dive into the shocking details of this alleged scheme, I need you to do three things for me. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and get the real, unfiltered stories that the mainstream network won't touch, hit that like button, subscribe to LPBW Update, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single breaking report. Your support allows us to dig deeper and bring you the content you deserve. Now, let's get into the heart of the matter, the phantom debt that threatens to swallow Roloff Farms whole. Our story begins not with a whisper of trouble, but with a roar of success. Over the past few years, viewers and followers have witnessed a dramatic and undeniable upgrade in Matt and Caryn's lifestyle. It was a gradual shift at first. A few more trips to their shared home in Arizona, perhaps a slightly nicer car. But soon, the changes became impossible to ignore. The vacations evolved from domestic getaways to first-class international excursions. We saw snapshots from five-star resorts in Cabo San Lucas, beachfront villas in Hawaii, and European cruises that cost more than the average person's yearly salary. The social media posts painted a picture of idyllic, work-free bliss, a permanent holiday funded, everyone assumed, by the farm's ever-growing popularity. Back in Oregon, the spending was just as conspicuous. A brand new, top-of-the-line luxury SUV appeared in the driveway, a gleaming testament to their prosperity. Then came the state-of-the-art recreational vehicle, a veritable home on wheels equipped with every imaginable amenity, perfect for their cross-country jaunts. But the crown jewel of their expenditure was the renovation of the big house, Matt's dream home. This wasn't just a new coat of paint and some new furniture. Insider whispers describe a complete gut renovation, with no expense spared. We're talking imported Italian marble countertops, custom-built cabinetry that cost a fortune, and a fully integrated smart home system controlling everything from the lights to the security cameras. To the outside world, and more importantly to Matt, this was the payoff for a lifetime of hard work. He saw the flourishing pumpkin season, the constant stream of tourists, and the continued success of the show as the engine driving this new era of prosperity. In his mind, every dollar spent was a dollar earned. He would proudly tell friends that the farm was doing better than ever, and that Caryn, with her business background, was a financial wizard. He believed her when she spoke of her savvy investments and her knack for making money work for them. Matt, the dreamer and the builder, was focused on his projects, the giant log cabin, new attractions for the farm, and he was more than happy to entrust the complex day-to-day financials to Caryn. He saw their lifestyle not as an expense, but as a reward, a tangible symbol of their joint success. He had no reason to believe it was all an illusion, a beautiful facade built on a foundation of crumbling debt. The reality, according to our sources and the financial trail we've begun to piece together, is far more sinister. The farm's success, while real, was allegedly not nearly enough to fund this level of opulence. The true source of the cash flow was not profits, but debt. Caryn, having spent years as the farm manager and now as Matt's partner, had an unparalleled understanding of the farm's complex structure. She knew its assets, its titles, and its history better than anyone, perhaps even better than Matt himself, who was always focused on the next big project rather than the fine print on the deeds. This intimate knowledge became her alleged weapon. The scheme, as our theory posits, was both brilliant and deceptively simple. Caryn began by identifying the farm's most valuable, unencumbered assets. These were parcels of land, sections of the farm that were owned outright, free and clear of any existing mortgages. The original farmhouse, certain fields, the wedding venue property, each was a pot of gold waiting to be leveraged. With a clean title, an asset can be used as collateral for a substantial business loan or line of credit. Her approach to Matt was masterful in its manipulation. She never presented it as taking on new, significant debt for personal use. Instead, she framed each transaction as a shrewd business move designed to benefit the farm. She would approach Matt with a stack of papers and a confident smile, saying something like, "Honey, interest rates are at a historic low. I was talking to the bank and we can refinance the main property. We'll get a much lower monthly payment and we can pull out a little cash to finally fund that new Western town you've been dreaming of. It's basically free money." To Matt, a man who loves a good deal and is always thinking about the next attraction, this sounded like a fantastic idea. He'd see the name of a reputable bank on the letterhead, see the words Roloff Farms, and sign on the dotted line, trusting Caryn to handle the details. On another occasion, it would be a business line of credit. "Matt, pumpkin season is getting more expensive to set up every year," she'd explain. "Let's open a revolving line of credit. We don't even have to touch it, but it's a safety net. It protects our cash flow so we're never caught short. It's what all the big businesses do." Again, it sounded responsible, forward-thinking. He would sign, completely unaware that this safety net was about to be stretched to its breaking point. The genius of the alleged deception was in the execution. The loan funds, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time, were deposited into one of the farm's numerous business accounts. From there, the money trail would become intentionally murky. Caryn, who controlled the books, could easily move large sums around. A transfer of $50,000 to another account could be labeled equipment deposit. A wire of $75,000 could be earmarked down payment, Arizona property venture. $100,000 could be justified as vendor payments for pumpkin season supplies. Because the farm's operations were so complex, with so many legitimate expenses, these massive outflows of cash didn't immediately raise an alarm. They were drops in a very large, very complicated bucket. This process was repeated again and again. It was a strategy of loan stacking. Once she had leveraged one parcel of land with a loan from Bank A, she would move to another clean title parcel and secure another loan from Bank B. She then might approach a private lender for a third loan against a different asset. Each lender saw only the specific asset they were financing, not the total crushing weight of the debt being piled onto the entire Roloff Farms enterprise. It started with a $250,000 line of credit, then a $500,000 business loan, then another. Like a secret addiction, the numbers grew, spiraling into the millions, all while Matt remained blissfully unaware, believing he was the king of a thriving agricultural empire. In reality, he was becoming a prisoner in a gilded cage, and Caryn held the only key. For years, this financial house of cards stood firm, protected by a wall of complexity and misplaced trust. But every scheme, no matter how clever, has a weak point. For Caryn, that weak point was the one man who knew the Roloff books almost as well as she did, Ron, the farm's longtime accountant. Ron was a pillar of the old guard. He had been with the family for decades, a meticulous, no-nonsense professional who had seen the farm through thick and thin. He remembered when the farm was just a humble patch of land and had personally handled the books as it grew into a national brand. Ron would have spotted the alarming increase in debt service payments in a heartbeat. He would have questioned the purpose of these new, massive loans. He would have marched straight into Matt's office and demanded an explanation. But then a pivotal event occurred. Ron announced his retirement. It was a completely natural, expected transition after a long and successful career. Publicly, Matt and Caryn threw him a lovely farewell party, thanking him for his years of loyal service. Privately, our sources suggest Caryn saw this not as a loss, but as a golden opportunity. The one person who could have immediately exposed her was gracefully exiting the stage. Now, she had the chance to bring in her own people. She convinced Matt that it was time to modernize their accounting. Ron was great, but he was old school, she likely argued. We need a dynamic, younger firm that understands modern corporate finance and can help us grow. She handpicked a new firm, a slick downtown Portland operation we'll call Prestige Financial Solutions. They had a fancy website and a long list of corporate clients. Crucially, Caryn established herself as the firm's sole point of contact. All communications, all reports, all questions were to be funneled through her. Matt, busy with his projects, readily agreed. It was one less thing for him to worry about. Caryn had effectively built a firewall between Matt and the true financial state of his own farm. But she made one critical miscalculation. She assumed everyone at the new firm would be a high-level partner who would be content to simply cash her checks and not ask too many questions. She didn't count on the relentless curiosity and professional integrity of a junior accountant. Let's call him David. David was fresh out of business school, a newly minted CPA, hungry to make his mark. Being assigned to the prestigious Roloff Farms account was a dream come true. He dove into the books with an eagerness his superiors mistook for simple ambition. At first, everything seemed impressive. The revenue from pumpkin season, the television money, it was all there. But as David began the tedious work of reconciling the balance sheets, a sense of deep unease began to creep in. The numbers weren't adding up. The first red flag was the debt-to-asset ratio. He calculated the total estimated value of the farm's assets and then tallied up the outstanding loans. The result was horrifying. The farm was leveraged to the hilt, with debt approaching 90% of its total value. For a business so dependent on seasonal income, this was a dangerously high-risk position. Then he started tracing the cash. He'd see a loan document for, say, $750,000, with the stated purpose being capital for agricultural infrastructure improvements. But when he looked for corresponding expenditures, invoices for a new barn, receipts for irrigation systems, payments to construction crews, he found nothing on that scale. The money had simply vanished from the main operating accounts, siphoned off into other entities, or paid out in ways that were impossible to trace. The final, horrifying discovery was the one that sent a chill down his spine. While reviewing the monthly debt service payments, he noticed something that every accountant is trained to recognize as the ultimate sign of a financial death spiral. The payment for a large loan from one bank was being made directly from the funds recently disbursed by a brand new loan from a different bank. It was a classic Ponzi-like scheme on a smaller scale, using new debt to pay off old debt. This wasn't a business strategy. It was a desperate, unsustainable juggle to keep the collectors at bay. The farm wasn't operating on its profits. It was surviving by taking on more and more water, just moments away from sinking completely. David was now in an impossible position. He was a junior employee in a firm that was clearly happy to look the other way for a high-profile client. If he raised the alarm with his bosses, He'd be told to mind his own business, or worse, he could be fired. If he went public, he'd be violating client confidentiality and could face a lawsuit that would destroy his young career. Yet, as a licensed CPA, he had an ethical and legal obligation not to sign off on what he knew to be dangerously misleading financial statements. Doing so could put his own license at risk. For weeks, he agonized, losing sleep, terrified of the consequences of either action or inaction. Finally, he devised a plan. He couldn't be the hero who rode in on a white horse, but he could light a fuse and walk away. He had watched the show and knew the family dynamics. He recognized that of all the children, Zach seemed the most grounded, the most concerned with the farm's long-term future, and the one most likely to act responsibly. Late one night, from a library computer, David created a temporary, anonymous email address. He composed a short, cryptic, but urgent message. He sent it to the public contact email on Zach and Tori's social media page, praying it would find its way to him. The subject line read, "An urgent and confidential concern regarding the future of Roloff Farms." The message was brief. "Zachary Roloff, I am a professional with knowledge of your family's business finances. I am contacting you anonymously out of a concern for my own career, but I can no longer remain silent. Your family's legacy is in grave danger. The farm's debt is far greater than you can imagine. Ask a trusted, independent advisor to run a full title and lien search on all parcels of the property. Look at all loans and lines of credit opened in the last 36 months. The money is not where you think it is. Please, for the sake of your family, investigate this before it's too late." He hit send, deleted the account, and walked away, having thrown a lifeline into the churning waters, hoping someone would grab it. When the anonymous email landed in Zach Roloff's inbox, his first instinct was to dismiss it. In their world of public scrutiny, they received all sorts of strange messages from fans, critics, and conspiracy theorists. It was probably just another troll trying to stir up drama. He almost deleted it. But something about the message's specific professional language gave him pause. Phrases like title and lien search, lines of credit, in 36 months sounded less like a crazy fan and more like someone who actually knew what they were talking about. The message also tapped into a deep-seated anxiety Zach already had. His own contentious negotiations with Matt over purchasing a piece of the farm had left a bitter taste in his mouth. He had felt that his father's financial valuation of the property was unrealistic, and he had long harbored a quiet concern that Matt, under Caryn's influence, was becoming more focused on a lavish retirement than on preserving the family legacy. The email sat in his inbox for days, a digital thorn in his side. He couldn't shake the feeling of dread it had instilled. He knew he couldn't go to his dad. Matt would immediately become defensive, accuse Zach of mistrust, and go straight to Caryn, who would undoubtedly spin a plausible story and shut down any inquiry. Going to his mom, Amy, was also a non-starter. It would ignite a firestorm of "I told you so's" and create a massive family war before he even had any facts. He was on his own. Feeling the weight of a potential catastrophe on his shoulders, Zach made a crucial decision. He reached out to the one person he knew he could trust completely, someone discreet and professionally qualified, his and Tori's personal financial advisor. Let's call her Susan. Susan was a savvy, no-nonsense professional who had helped them navigate their own mortgage and investments. She was not a part of the Roloff family's inner circle and had no emotional stake in their drama. She dealt in facts, figures, and legal documents. Zach called her and explained the situation, reading the anonymous email aloud. He asked if she could, without raising any alarms, simply do what the email suggested: conduct a discreet review of the public records associated with Roloff Farms. He authorized her to act on his behalf as a potential heir to the property, giving her the legal standing to make inquiries. Susan, sensing the urgency and gravity in Zach's voice, agreed immediately. She explained that much of what he was asking for was a matter of public record. Anyone can go to the county recorder's office and look up property, deeds, liens, and mortgage documents. It would be tedious, but not impossible. Over the next week, Susan began her investigation. Working from her office, she accessed digital county databases and dispatched paralegals to sift through physical records. What she started to uncover was, in her words, a tangled and horrifying web of financial encumbrances. The first report she pulled up showed a significant loan from a major agricultural bank, which was expected. But then she found another and another. There were multiple deeds of trust filed against different parcels of the farm, securing loans from a half dozen different financial institutions. She discovered UCC filings, Uniform Commercial Code liens, against the farm's equipment and future crop yields. It was a systematic leveraging of every single asset the farm possessed. The most shocking discovery was the evidence of cross-collateralization. This is a complex financial maneuver where the collateral for one loan is also used as secondary collateral for another loan. It meant that all the loans were contractually interlinked. A default on a single payment for any one of the loans could trigger a default clause on all of them simultaneously. It was a doomsday switch. Susan compiled her findings into a detailed report and called a meeting with Zach. In the quiet confidentiality of her office, she laid out the stark, undeniable truth. "Zach," she said, her voice grave, "your father's farm is a ticking time bomb. Based on these public records, I've identified at least 5 major business loans and 2 substantial lines of credit, all taken out within the last 3 years. The total debt obligation I can confirm from these documents is in excess of $8 million. Zach's face went pale. The number was beyond anything he could have conceived. "But it's worse than just the amount," Susan continued. "The structure is what's so dangerous. One missed payment, just one, and any of these lenders has the right to begin foreclosure proceedings. And because of the cross-collateralization clauses, they wouldn't just be foreclosing on one piece of the farm. They could seize the entire property. The whole thing. Your dad seems to have unknowingly bet the entire farm, and the odds are not in his favor." In that moment, everything crystallized for Zach. The anonymous email, Matt and Karen's extravagant trips, the new cars, the expensive home renovation. It wasn't funded by pumpkin patch profits. It was funded by systematically draining every last drop of equity from the land his grandfather had bought, the land he had grown up on. The money for Amy's buyout, his own inheritance, his siblings' legacy, it was all tied up in this house of cards. The feeling in the pit of his stomach was no longer just suspicion. It was the cold, hard certainty of impending disaster. He now held the terrible knowledge that his family's century-old legacy was on the verge of being wiped out, not by a natural disaster or a bad crop, but by greed and deception from within. The time for quiet investigation was over. It was time for a reckoning. The drive to his father's house felt like the longest journey of Zach's life. The folder of documents Susan had prepared sat on the passenger seat, a heavy, malevolent presence. Every page, every highlighted clause, every staggering number felt like a nail being hammered into the coffin of his family's history. This wasn't just about money or land anymore. It was about a fundamental betrayal that cut deeper than any family argument they had ever had. He felt a cold, simmering rage mixed with a profound sadness. How could his father, the man who was always so proud of his own business acumen, have been so blind? And how could Caryn, a woman who had been welcomed into their family, orchestrate such a devastating deception? He practiced the opening lines in his head, but they all sounded hollow and accusatory. There was no easy way to tell someone that their entire world was a lie. He knew he had to get Matt alone. The confrontation needed to happen on neutral ground, and most importantly, far from Caryn's immediate influence. He parked his car not at the main house, but down by the old workshop, a place that held memories of a simpler time, of him and his brothers working on projects with their dad. He sent a text. "Hey, Dad, I'm down by the old shop. Could use your opinion on a project idea. Got a minute?" It was a deliberate choice. The workshop was Matt's sanctuary, a place where he was the creator, the builder. Zach hoped it would make him more receptive, more grounded. A few minutes later, Matt's mule rumbled down the path. He had a smile on his face, seemingly without a care in the world. The sight of it made Zach's stomach clench. "Zach, what's up, buddy? What's this big project idea?" Matt asked, climbing out of the vehicle. His tone was light, cheerful. He was the lord of his manor, surveying his kingdom, a kingdom Zach now knew was built on quicksand. Zach took a deep breath. "It's not really about a project, Dad. I needed to talk to you alone. It's important." The shift in Zach's tone was immediate, and Matt's smile faded, replaced by a look of paternal concern, tinged with a familiar wariness. Their recent history was fraught with tension over the farm negotiations. "Okay," Matt said slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What's going on? Is this about the north side of the property again? I thought we were past that." "No, it's not about me buying the farm," Zach said, his voice steady. "It's about the farm. It's about its future. It's about everything." He reached into his truck and pulled out the folder. "Dad, I need you to just listen. No interruptions. Just hear me out, please." They sat on the old wooden bench outside the workshop. Zach started slowly, carefully, explaining how he had received a cryptic but professional-sounding warning. He explained how, out of a gut feeling of concern, he had asked his financial advisor to simply look into the public records. He was framing it not as an accusation, but as a concerned son following up on a potential threat. But the moment Zach mentioned an outside advisor looking into the farm's books, Matt's demeanor changed from wary to indignant. His back stiffened. "You did what?" Matt snapped, his voice rising. "You had some stranger poking around in our business behind my back? What right do you have, Zachary? After all the grief you gave me about the price of the farm, now you're hiring people to spy on me? This is unbelievable." "It wasn't like that, Dad," Zach began, but Matt was already on a roll. "Oh, I know exactly what it was like. This is about Caryn, isn't it? You and your mother, you've never fully accepted her. You think she's some kind of gold digger. Let me tell you something. That woman has been the best thing to happen to me in this farm. She's a financial genius. She's streamlined our operations. She's maximized our profits. The reason we can afford nice things, the reason this farm is more successful than it has ever been, is because of her hard work and her business sense. She's done more for the Roloff legacy in the last 5 years than you have in your entire life." The words were like a physical blow, but Zach held his ground. He had expected this. He had been prepared for the wall of denial. "Dad, please," he pleaded. "This isn't about my feelings for Caryn. This is about facts. This is about documents. Just look." He opened the folder and handed Matt the top sheet. It was a simple one-page summary prepared by Susan. At the top, in bold letters, it read, "Summary of Encumbrances on Roloff Farms, LLC." Below was a list of financial institutions, followed by loan numbers and outstanding balances. At the bottom of the page was a single terrifying number, circled in red ink. Total estimated debt, $8,250,000. Matt glanced at the paper and scoffed, tossing it onto the bench between them. "This is ridiculous. This is nonsense. Yes, we've refinanced. We took out some business loans for capital improvements, Every successful business in America has debt, Zach. It's called leverage. It's how you grow. Karen has us on a plan to pay it all off. Your advisor is clearly an amateur who doesn't understand corporate finance and is just trying to scare you to justify her fee. He stood up, ready to walk away, his face a mask of angry dismissal. He was defending his castle, and more importantly, he was defending his queen. This was the moment of truth. Zach knew if he let his father walk away now, it would be too late. "Dad, stop," he said, his voice firm, cutting through Matt's tirade. "Sit down. Look at the rest of it, please. As your son, I am begging you to look at the actual documents." Perhaps it was the desperation in Zach's voice, a tone Matt hadn't heard since he was a small child, that made him hesitate. With a heavy, resentful sigh, Matt sat back down. He snatched the folder from Zach's lap and began to flip through the pages with aggressive impatience. The first few pages were copies of deeds of trust. He recognized the property descriptions. He saw the official letterhead of major banks. Then his eyes fell upon the signature line at the bottom of a loan agreement for $1.5 million. It was his own signature, clear as day. He stared at it. He remembered signing something. Caryn had told him it was the final paperwork for refinancing the main house mortgage at a lower rate. She'd said it would save them thousands a month. But the number on this document wasn't the modest amount of their old mortgage. It was a 7-figure loan. He felt a flicker of confusion, a tiny crack in his wall of certainty. He turned the page. Another loan document, this one from a different lender, for $900,000, secured against the wedding barn property. Again, his signature. He remembered this one too. Caryn had called it a capital access line, something they could use for a future expansion of the wedding business. She'd said they didn't even have to use it. It was just a smart thing to have in place. But this wasn't a line of credit. It was a fully disbursed term loan. The money had been paid out months ago. Where did it go? He kept turning the pages, each one a fresh wave of nausea. A loan against the pumpkin patch fields. A lien against the farm equipment, from the tractors to the tour wagons. Another line of credit, maxed out. The documents blurred together, a nightmare of legal jargon and astronomical numbers. His bravado began to evaporate, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. The folder felt heavier and heavier in his hands. The final section of the report was a series of flowcharts that Susan had created. They were simple, almost insultingly so. One chart showed the date a loan for $750,000 was funded into a Roloff Farms business account. The next chart showed that within 48 hours, a payment of $68,000 was made from that same account to service the debt on 3 other pre-existing loans. Another arrow showed a wire transfer for $150,000 to an account for a shell corporation that Susan's research had traced back to a registered agent in Arizona. Another showed tens of thousands of dollars in credit card payments to American Express for accounts not directly tied to farm business. This was the final, undeniable proof. It wasn't leverage. It wasn't a growth strategy. It was a shell game. It was a Ponzi scheme. The new money was being used to pay for the old money and to fund a lifestyle that had nothing to do with the business of the farm. Matt's hands began to tremble. The color drained from his face, leaving behind a sickly, gray pallor. He dropped the folder as if it were on fire, the pages scattering on the dusty ground around their feet. He put his head in his hands, his breathing ragged. The angry, defiant patriarch was gone, replaced by a small, broken man. He didn't speak for a long time. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic on the highway and the chirping of birds, oblivious to the world that had just shattered. She told me it was for refinancing," he finally whispered, his voice cracking. The words were not directed at Zach, but at the empty space in front of him. "Lower rates. She said we were saving money." He looked up at his son, his eyes filled with a terrifying mix of confusion and horror. The RV, she said she got a great deal and paid for it from her investment portfolio. The trips, she said it was all on points from the farm's business credit card. Every memory of the past few years was now being replayed in his mind, but the film was now a horror movie. Every lavish dinner, every first-class plane ticket, every expensive piece of jewelry he'd bought her, believing it was a gift from a successful man to the woman he loved. What was it really? A gift bought with borrowed money, a debt secured against his children's future. He thought about the pride he felt showing off his newly renovated house. The Italian marble Caryn had insisted on, the expensive appliances, the custom woodwork, he had believed it was a monument to his success. Now he saw it for what it was, a monument to a lie, built brick by brick with phantom debt. "Dad," Zach said gently, his own anger giving way to a pained empathy for his father's devastation. "There's more. Amy's buyout." Matt flinched as if he'd been struck. Of course. The final payment to Amy. He had a contractual legal obligation to pay her the remaining portion of her half of the farm. He had assured her the money was secure. He had believed it was. But where was that money supposed to come from? The farm had no liquid cash reserves. He now realized with a sickening certainty that the plan, Karen's plan, he now understood, was to use one of the lines of credit to make the payment. But the lines of credit were already maxed out. And even if they weren't, paying Amy would mean taking on even more debt, pushing them closer to the point of no return. If any of these lenders caught wind of the farm's true financial state and called their loans, the entire enterprise would collapse. The farm would be seized and sold at auction. The proceeds would go to the banks first, and there would be nothing left. Nothing for him, nothing for the kids, and absolutely nothing for Amy. He hadn't just put his own legacy at risk. He had potentially defrauded his ex-wife, the mother of his children, out of the nest egg she had earned over 30 years of marriage and hard labor. The shame was a physical weight pressing down on him, stealing the air from his lungs. "I have to talk to her," Matt stammered, scrambling to his feet. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. The confidence, the swagger, the Matt Roloff persona was completely gone. He was adrift in a sea of betrayal. Zach stood up with him. "I'm coming with you," he said. It wasn't a request. He knew his father was too broken, too emotionally compromised to face this alone. He needed a witness. He needed someone to keep him anchored to the terrible reality of the situation, to prevent Karen from spinning another web of reassuring lies. Together, father and son, now united in a shared crisis, walked grimly towards the big house. The beautiful home that had once been a symbol of Matt's dreams now looked like a crime scene. As they approached, they could see Karen through the large picture window, humming to herself as she arranged a bouquet of flowers on the gleaming marble countertop. She looked happy, content, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break over her head. Matt pushed the door open without knocking. The sound made Caryn jump, and she turned, a bright smile on her face. "Matt! Zach! What a nice surprise to see you both. I was just about to make some iced tea." Her smile faltered as she saw their expressions. Matt's face was a deathly gray mask of anguish. Zach stood behind him, his arms crossed, his expression cold and hard as granite. "Caryn," Matt said, his voice a low, unsteady rasp. "We need to talk about the loans." Karen's posture changed almost imperceptibly. Her shoulders tightened. A flicker of something, was it panic, annoyance, crossed her face before being replaced by a look of practiced concern. "The loans? Honey, what about them? Is everything okay? You look pale." She started to walk towards him, her hand outstretched in a comforting gesture. "Don't," Matt said, taking a step back. The rejection stopped her cold. He gestured numbly to the dining room table. "Sit down, please." She sat, placing her hands neatly in her lap, assuming an air of calm composure. Zach remained standing by the door, a silent sentinel. Matt walked to the table and, with trembling hands, placed the summary sheet from the folder in front of her. The one with the $8 million figure circled in red. Caryn glanced down at it, her expression unreadable. "Okay," she said in a smooth, reasonable tone. "I can see this looks alarming out of context. Matt, you know how complex the farm's finances are. Zach, with all due respect, you're not an expert in this area. This is a standard leveraging strategy. We're using the bank's money at a low interest rate to create opportunities for growth. It's all perfectly manageable." She was calm, reassuring, her voice the epitome of corporate confidence. She was trying to spin it, just as Zach knew she would, but Matt wasn't listening to the spin anymore. The spell was broken. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't see the loving partner and brilliant businesswoman. He saw a stranger. "Don't talk to me about context, Caryn," he said, his voice gaining a raw, wounded strength. "Don't talk to me about leverage. I saw the statements. I saw the flow charts. A loan from Act First Bank was used to make a payment on a loan from Pacific West Financial. That's not a growth strategy. What is that, Caryn? Tell me what that is." "It's called managing cash flow, Matt," she retorted, a sharp, defensive edge creeping into her voice. "Sometimes you have to move money around to cover short-term obligations. It's all temporary. Once the pumpkin season revenue comes in, everything will be balanced out. You're overreacting." "Overreacting?" Matt's voice cracked on the verge of a hysterical laugh. "The house! This house! You told me we were refinancing our old mortgage, but we signed a new loan for $1.5 million. Where did that money go, Caryn? The marble countertops, did they cost $1 million? The vacations, the new car, the RV, you told me that was from your investments. Was this the investment? Borrowing against my children's future?" The dam of his composure finally broke. He slammed his hand down on the table, the sound echoing through the cavernous room. "Answer me! Where did the money go? You had me sign paper after paper. I trusted you. I trusted you with everything, with the farm, with my life, with my family's legacy, and you have driven it into the ground. All for what? For this? For a fancy car and a trip to Cabo?" Caryn finally dropped the facade. Her face hardened, her eyes turning cold and resentful. "Oh, don't you dare lay this all on me, Matt Roloff," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You love the lifestyle. You love playing the big shot, telling everyone how successful you were. Did you ever once ask to see a balance sheet? Did you ever once question where the money was coming from? No, you were too busy playing with your toys, building your log cabin, and leaving the hard work of actually running the business to me. I did what I had to do to give you the life you wanted, the life you felt you deserved. This is on you as much as it is on me." It was the final, most cruel betrayal. Not just the theft, not just the lies, but the complete and utter lack of remorse. The attempt to twist her own greed into a warped act of generosity, to shift the blame onto his own trust, his own blindness. In that moment, Matt saw the abyss that had opened up beneath his feet. The woman he loved did not exist. The life he was living was a complete fabrication. His farm, his legacy, and his heart were all bankrupt. Zach watched the scene unfold, a silent, grim witness to the complete implosion of his father's world. The truth was out, ugly and undeniable, laid bare on the marble countertop of a house built on lies. Outside, the sun was beginning to set over the rolling hills of Roloff Farms, casting long shadows across the fields. But inside, a darkness had fallen that might never lift. With the banks holding a ticking time bomb and the family's trust shattered beyond repair, the question was no longer about saving a relationship. It was about whether there was anything left of the Roloff legacy to save at all. The farm was on the verge of collapse, Amy's financial future was in peril, and the entire Roloff story, once a tale of overcoming adversity, was about to become a cautionary tale of greed, deceit, and the catastrophic price of blind trust.